Now turning our focus back to Haryana, where clearly pollsters and reporters and everybody seems to have got it wrong. It has not been without controversy. The BJP, the Congress has formally complained to the Election Commission earlier today, talking about very slow counting and slow updates. Jairam Ramesh has sent an official letter of complaint. Yogendra Yadav is with us. Yogendra ji, thank you. Dhanyavad, namaskar. Uh, it doesn't look to me that anything is going to change. I think we can say that the BJP is going to form the next government. हम बड़े ध्यान से रुक के बोल रहे थे because इतनी कुछ close contest थी. How taken aback are you? How disappointed are you? It goes in complete contradiction to what was being suggested or forecast.
Absolutely, Barkha. There are no two opinions about it. You said many people got it wrong. I was certainly one of them. Although I didn't get into seat forecasting, but I've been saying for the last 1 month that Haryana is a one-sided election, that Congress is going to form the government, that the only question is about the margin of Congress's victory. Whether it will be a Hawa or an Andi or even tsunami, I said, we don't know. I'll not get into that, but clearly Congress is coming to power. That has been proven completely wrong. At this stage of counting, there could be 1 or 2 seats plus or minus, but I don't think the overall result is going to change. We can be reasonably sure now that BJP is forming the government. Even if they fall 1 or 2 short of majority, they have a couple of independent BJP rebels who would, of course, be there to support them. So it's BJP government, we can be reasonably sure, and which is to say, our assessment was wrong. Politics is a humbling experience, not only for politicians, but also for those who observe politics. This is one of those moments. I must have covered at least 100 elections by now, probably more. And I would remember this as one of those few where I was completely surprised. Even this morning, I was not. So let me begin by recounting why did I think that Congress was winning. 3 reasons. One, historically, BJP does worse in Vidhan Sabha election than it does in Lok Sabha election. This happened in 2014, in 19, and was expected to happen this time. In the Lok Sabha election, BJP and Congress were neck and neck. BJP going below that obviously meant BJP going out and Congress coming back to power. Empirically, I traveled with my colleagues like you do, and making sure that we don't speak only to the more articulate, making sure that we speak to the poorest, ordinary people, and came back with a clear impression that Congress was ahead, that compared to the Lok Sabha election, things were going in Congress's way and against the BJP. And all of this was consolidated by surveys and exit polls. And if you recall, not a single exit poll, even its lowest range, gave Congress anything less than 45 seats. So that's why there was this impression. But the elections are not decided by exit poll, and thank God for that. The elections are decided by the people. They vote. They tell us what is it that they want. So clearly, we made an error. I should say I made an error. There was clearly an undercurrent that we failed to cause. And let me try and anticipate, let me try and guess what that undercurrent must have been. All these are very initial thoughts because I cannot give you a confident explanation of what happened. If I had that explanation, I wouldn't have said what I said till yesterday. My guess is the following, that there was an undercurrent that many people who did not vote for Congress, or at least finally went and did not vote for Congress, said to us when people like us spoke to them, they said, no, they will vote for Congress. Why is it that it happened? My guess is that these were people who had a certain apprehension, but who did not articulate that apprehension. And towards the end, in the voting day, that apprehension made all the difference. And the apprehension was this, that Congress government means a government of one family, one caste, and 1 or 2 districts. This is what the impression has been. The biggest charge against Mr. Huda's Congress government of the previous one was that ये तो रोहतक सोनीपत की सरकार थी, सिर्फ एक जाति के लिए चलती थी और उन्हीं की सब कुछ चलती थी. And the impression, as elections came closer, and the impression started gaining ground that Congress was coming back, it created an apprehension. Okay, so it's back to the rule of one particular community. Congress's internal squabbles did not help because they actually ended up accentuating the same apprehension. And BJP very successfully played on that. That may have made the difference of 2 or 3% vote, which is all that mattered in a close election like this. This is somewhat similar to what happened in Uttar Pradesh in 2022. Everyone thought Samajwadi Party was doing very well. BJP went around and told people, remember, if Samajwadi Party comes, ये यादव मुसलमान की सरकार बनेगी, फिर ये होगा, फिर वो होगा, and that stuck till 2024 when Akhilesh went out of his way to ensure that he was not seen to be leading one party government, one caste rule. Something similar may have happened. This is the closest guess that I can make after 2 hours of soul searching.
Firstly, thank you for always being that rare person in public life who isn't afraid to acknowledge a mistake when you make one. That is still a rarity in our public discourse. So I always appreciate that. Um, this is a very interesting thing. ये बिहार में भी हमने देखा है, यूपी में भी हमने देखा है कि एक जात से associated, in this case the Jat community, and ek parivar, one caste community. You are saying that the domination of the Hudas eventually proved to be not an advantage but a disadvantage for the Congress party at first glance, prima facie.
So it seems, and this is no secret that this was BJP's major plank. 35 was BJP's major political card in Haryana. Haryana mythically has 36 communities, and BJP's plank was कि 35 हमारे साथ हैं, एक की हम परवाह नहीं करते. And remember, Haryana is a state which has always had a Jat chief minister, almost always, so ever since its formation. BJP was the party that brought in a non-Jat chief minister who ruled for 5 years. And when they wanted to replace him, and that was not a bad move, they again brought another non-Jat chief minister, which in Haryana is very rare. Mr. Naib Singh Saini was not one of the prominent Haryana leaders. He was not even one of the prominent BJP leaders. But BJP brought him in to send this message. So BJP's message has been quite clear. We are a party which dares to bring in non-Jats. We can, बाकी 35 समुदाय को हम साथ लेके चलेंगे और एक समुदाय जो करना है सोच लीजिए, फर्क नहीं पड़ता हमारे को. That's been an unspoken message of the BJP. That message helped BJP in the past. I was among those who thought that yes, they're trying it for the third time. इस बार नहीं चलेगा. But clearly it worked. BJP also made a couple of other moves which were good moves. I thought it's too late, but clearly it worked. Number one, replacing Mr. Khattar, which was a very bold move. Replacing a chief minister 6 months before the assembly election, less than 2 months before parliamentary election, was a very, very risky move. They did it. And whenever I spoke to people, they said, "नहीं, खट्टर से तो अच्छे हैं, I've said. Dynamic हैं, कुछ कर रहे हैं." So they managed to erase that negativity associated with Mr. Khattar. Second, during the elections, during ticket distribution and campaigning, BJP took some very hard decisions. Their ticket distribution was focused solely on who can win, irrespective of their past reputation. So, say someone like Ramvilas Sharma, who was a tall BJP leader, one of the founders of Haryana BJP, he was denied ticket in his home constituency, denied ticket because he was not seen to be winning. Now, these are very bold decisions. BJP did that. I had considered all this and I said, these last minute things don't win you elections. But clearly we were wrong. And, this was an election, which was an election maybe of 1 or 2% votes. And these are things which make all the difference, that 1 or 2%. Congress may have been complacent, may not have done enough to counter this impression. And BJP managed to push this impression and did those additional things towards the end of the election that give them that 1 or 2 point advantage.
Now, this last sentence that you almost said in a throwaway way, कि Congress may have been complacent. आपने 2-3 चीजें कही हैं. एक तो the domination of one family, one caste could have been a big perception in some of the voters. Dusra, the BJP replaced Khattar, played on the mobilization of the non-Jat community. But you also said Congress may have been complacent. What do you think? I know hindsight is 2020, but what do you think were the signs of that complacency? जो अब लगता है अरे हमने कांग्रेस ने ये क्यों नहीं किया, ये कर सकते थे, वो क्यों नहीं किया, वो कर सकते थे.
I'm always a little wary of these things. As you said in a throwaway remark, hindsight is 2020. You know, once someone loses, then it's the easiest thing in the world is to say everything they did was wrong and everything someone else did was right, which of course doesn't happen. Uh, but in hindsight, the impression that everyone had was, I mean, some mythical figure of 72 seats to Mr. Huda was thrown around, that Mr. Huda managed to get 72 seats. And therefore, this is going to be, one person, one community Raj. Enough was not done to counter that. I'm sure all kinds of questions will be asked about candidate selection. But to my mind, these are all hindsight things. If the candidates had done well, everyone would have said, what smart choices. I personally do not think Congress made very poor candidate selection. Candidate selection was okay based on winnability, as it normally happens. BJP did slightly better, but then BJP always does slightly better in terms of candidate selection because they have slightly better inputs and so on. I don't think that's so true. And third was the question of Congress's infighting. Now, infighting is not a new thing in Congress. And I thought the number of rebel candidates that I had expected actually were not there. Initially, I thought there would be 30, 40 serious rebels this time. But there were actually only 20, and maybe after that, a little less. But the one thing that the Congress factional fight did was that it gave out a message, once again, which aligned with this Jat non-Jat theme, because the Shailajaji's dissatisfaction, which she made public, didn't quite hide, that contributed to the same message. Those are things that may have cost Congress more than we thought it would.
In this infighting, Sailaja, obviously, Dalit leader, a woman leader, very public about her disquiet. But at the very last moment, the Congress was able to get back Ashok Tawar, also another prominent Dalit leader. Do we have any granular understanding, or it's too early about the impact that we don't actually know the breakup of how right now, at least right now, we'll need to study it a little more. एक तो वो कितना बड़ा फैक्टर था Sailaja's disappointment, because polls seem to suggest that she was not really seen as a big contender for chief minister. दूसरा मेरा सवाल है कि जो इश्यूज आइडेंटिफाई किए गए थे, आपने भी वो किए, जवान, किसान, पहलवान, संविधान, उन इश्यूज का क्या हुआ? Is it that in some pockets these were big issues? Is it that in terms of vote share there were big issues, but the conversion of that vote share into seats was where the Congress failed? How do you look at it?
I don't think Jawan and Kisan issue did not work. Of course, they worked, and that's why Congress was in the race. Otherwise, Congress was not in the race. By 2019 parliamentary election, remember, Congress had only 28% votes. BJP had 58% votes. That's where the story begins. How does Congress crawl back? It crawls back partly because of the state assembly election impact, but largely because of the Kisan Andolan. That there is at least the dominant peasant community is firmly disoriented, is firmly detached from, not aligned with the BJP. That is what happened after the Kisan Andolan. However, now we can say that it did not affect all the farming communities. It was largely the dominant farming community. It happened. Wrestlers' protest, in a sense, reinforced the same section. So perhaps what was happening was that a small section was being charged and recharged and even more intense. It was getting more and more intense, but it was not wide enough to affect the entire society. So these issues did matter. Unemployment was an issue. But did Congress look like a party which was going to solve the unemployment problem? Was Congress's manifesto promises there, did they actually reach the ground? I didn't get that sense. So yes, these issues mattered, and that's why BJP was in trouble. That's why Congress was in the game. But they did not. They were not so overwhelming as to rule out everything else. Similarly, on the issue of Shailaja ji's protest and the Dalit issue, there could be a direct effect and there is an indirect effect. The direct effect would have been if her dissatisfaction had affected Dalit voters across the state. I don't think that. In fact, if you look at the results, in areas of Shailajaji's own influence, that is Sirsa, Fatehabad, and if you extend it right up to Ambala, in these areas, Congress has done relatively better. So it's not that in her areas, Congress has lost, but there was an indirect effect. The indirect effect was that this articulation by a Dalit leader reinforced everyone's sense that, look, one community is dominating. It reinforced the BJP narrative. That may have been an impact.
Let's end with the impact on national politics. Let's be honest, had the BJP lost Haryana and the Congress had won, you perhaps would have been among those, and I would have been among those analyzing what does it mean for the brand of the Prime Minister after the Lok Sabha. Is something shifting? Hindi heartland में कुछ मुद्दे हैं जो जो अब बीजेपी को चोट पहुंचा रहे हैं. The corollary is also true. We must now ask, this is a state where the Prime Minister addressed only 4 rallies this time compared to 10 in 2014. Certainly his participation was more muted, but he still remains their biggest brand, unless we are now casting Haryana as a purely local election, which would be disingenuous of us, because if the result were the ulta, we would have definitely brought brand Modi into it. So अब brand Modi की जहां तक बात आती है, आप कैसे देखते हैं योगेंद्र जी?
You're absolutely right. We should anticipate what I would have said if Congress had won. And we don't need to anticipate because I actually said that even yesterday evening. I said the Haryana election may not directly affect voters in Maharashtra and Jharkhand, but it would definitely affect the mood, the morale, and the momentum of these elections. So clearly, now that it's gone against the Congress, it is going to adversely affect. Once again, it will not affect the voters directly, but it will affect the morale, the mood, and the mood of the workers and the momentum of elections. Now the opposition, especially Congress, starts on a defensive note. And Congress would have to be even more careful now in keeping the allies and so on. So it is a setback. There's absolutely no doubt about it. No point denying that basic thing. About the Prime Minister, I had said earlier, and I would say again, this election in Haryana was not fought on his name. He was not the central person in this election. He was not there even on the holdings of BJP. So at the most, I would have said, well, Mr. Modi alone does not win you elections. That's quite clear. And BJP had conceded it. The same situation holds today. But obviously, that's not how the BJP would present it. They would like to present it as Mr. Modi's victory. It will be done in the evening. But we know the result. And if Congress had won, it would not have been Rahul Gandhi's victory. But clearly, that's not how the BJP would present it. It would be presented differently. That's the routine game of politics. But there's absolutely no doubt that BJP now starts the remaining Vidhan Sabha elections on a positive note. BJP now would wish to present the Lok Sabha setback as a one-point event, which has now been reversed. So much of the burden now shifts to Jharkhand and Maharashtra, and we need to watch the results very carefully.
Yashwant Deshmukh is joining us, but Yogendra ji, I know you're on the tail end of our time with you, but stay as long as you long as you can. But just one
some other
question to you.
commitment. I would have loved to speak to Yashwant Bhai, but
ठीक है, we'll organize it another time. एक आपसे last comment मैं ले लूं अगर वो ये है कि आपने कहा कि if the BJP had lost, they would have not presented it as Modi's loss, and they will present it as Modi's wins. That's their politics. But in your understanding of the BJP's politics in the North Indian states, in what's loosely called the Hindi heartland, what does Haryana and the failure, as you called it, to read the undercurrent, what does it bring home to you as a critic of the BJP, as someone who works with the opposition?
The message is A, that you have to, you cannot be complacent. B, you need a broader caste coalition. You know, Dalit voter is one thing, but BC voter, backward caste voters, need to be very specifically targeted. Uh, Rahul Gandhi talks about caste census, which is fine, which is going to be an issue. No one can deny that. But just speaking about caste census by itself does not mobilize backward communities. Backward castes do not have a uniform politics cutting across states. You have to individually target them. You have to individually mobilize those communities. And that is where the opposition will have to spend enormous energy. Having farmers move, supporting farmers movement is not enough. That gets you only a few landed dominant peasant communities. And speaking about caste, census is not enough. That gets you a broad, general, abstract support. Converting that into specific support of communities, which are farming communities, which are backward communities, is a political task that remains to be undertaken.
Okay, Yogendraji, thank you. We look forward later in the week maybe to talking to you and Yashwant together. That would be make for a very interesting conversation. I know you're very busy today and much in demand, and so is Yashwant. So we let you go now. Thank you so much. Yashwant.